Hi everybody, my name is Jess Sarkanyan Love. Welcome to my channel where I talk about my two favorite things, planning, organizing, goal setting, and books. Today we're talking about books. Today's book is Smoke and Bone, or Daughter of Smoke and Bone, by Laini Taylor. So if this book interests you, grab a cup of coffee and let's go ahead and get started. What coffee are you all drinking today? I might talk about coffee a lot on this channel because I love coffee. I'm just drinking my regular Maxwell House French Roast Dark. I'm not drinking a specialty coffee, that's what I'm drinking. So I love coffee, it keeps me going. Tell me down below what kind of coffee you're drinking today. So without further ado, let's get started talking about Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. So first, a little bit about the author. Laini Taylor does have a website at lainitaylor.com, and I will link that down below as well. She was born in 1971 in Chico, California. She is the daughter of a Navy family, so she did travel a lot growing up, and I think that this definitely informed her writing. So she's lived in Hawaii, Italy, Belgium, Virginia, and California. She speaks some French and some Italian. She says she's always wanted to be a writer. So she did go to UC Berkeley and get a degree in English. And then she's also studied illustration at the California College of Arts and Crafts. She's married to an illustrator. His name's Jim DiBartolo, and they have worked together on a couple of projects. And I think this background in art and illustration absolutely informs the book Daughter of Smoke and Bone, because not only is the main character an artist, but the writing itself is so visually intense that you can really tell that this is something that's important to Laini. She has a daughter named Clementine, which is adorable, and she does have a blog on her website. So Laini Taylor sounds like the kind of person that I would love to hang out with, so girl, call me. So the edition of this book that I read was a first edition hardcover. I got it at my local library, and it was written in 2011 and published by, or not written, but published in 2011 by Little Brown and Company. Anybody who writes knows that she probably wrote this in like the year 2000 because it takes that long to get stuff published sometimes. So the cover, I absolutely love the cover art on this book. I like that there's this more cursive kind of font here, followed by the bolder lines underneath of it. And I feel like this contrast in the font kind of represents Karu, the protagonist. It kind of represents Karu's double life, because she does live a double life between her more supernatural family and then her earth realm or human realm, where she deals with humans and just being a regular person going to art school. I also really like the blue feather mask. I think that this is supposed to connect to the dance or the masquerade that Madrigal attends closer to the end of the book. And when I was reading, this is the color that I pictured Karu's hair being. So I really like that color and the use of that like aqua teal. So I'm just going to read for you the book jacket description to avoid any spoilers. That's the word I was looking for. To avoid any spoilers for you. This is probably how I usually provide you the synopsis of the books I read, just because if it's in the book jacket, it's not likely to spoil anything for you. So that's what we'll just do here. So the description of this book. Around the world, black handprints are appearing on doorways, scorched there by winged strangers who have crept through a slit in the sky. In a dark and dusty shop, a devil's supply of human teeth grows dangerously low. And in the tangled lanes of Prague, a young art student is about to be caught up in a brutal, otherworldly war. So it's a pretty enticing description. That's actually why I picked this up. This was not recommended to me. This was not anything that I saw on any lists on Instagram or anything like this. I was literally wandering around the library looking for a new YA. The cover caught my attention first, as usually happens, but then I did read that book jacket and think, okay, that sounds interesting and intriguing and something I want to read. So overall, I really did enjoy this book. One of the things that I had trouble with was keeping up with the descriptions of the chimera. So in one realm that the protagonist lives in, her name is Karu, the characters are chimeras, so they're like half human, half animal. And it was really hard to remember which character had which animal parts and what they actually looked like. So what I found to be helpful was to use these little post-it flags, and I would mark in here when there was a description of a new chimera character. And that way then when it was brought up again and that character was in another scene, I could flip back to this page and then I'd be able to remember, okay, this character has the head of a snake and the legs of a horse or whatever it was. So that was really helpful, and it's something I suggest doing if you're reading this, because that was a little bit hard to keep track of. I loved the description of Prague. Oh my goodness, let me read you a little bit of it. This is on page 24 and 25. All right. So, the streets of Prague were a fantasia, scarcely touched by the 21st century, or the 20th, or 19th for that matter. It was a city of alchemists and dreamers, its medieval cobbles once trod by golems, mystics, invading armies. Tall houses glowed goldenrod and carmine and eggshell blue, embellished with rococo plasterwork and capped in roofs of uniform red. Baroque cupolas were the soft green of antique copper, and Gothic steeples stood steady to impale fallen angels. The wind carried the memory of magic revolution violins, and the cobbled lanes meandered like creeks. Thugs wore Mozart wigs and pushed chamber music on street corners, and marionettes hung in windows, making the whole city seem like a theater with unseen puppeteers crouched behind the velvet. I love that so much. The way she describes Prague, this is definitely a place that I would love to go hang out and just sit and write or bring my camera and take photos. Like, oh. And you can really tell just from that passage how visual Laini Taylor's writing is, and how lyrical almost and poetic. She's truly, truly a wordsmith. She really works with language to her advantage, and I learned so many new words reading this book, which we'll get to here in a minute. Yes, so love the description of Prague. I also really liked, she had a lot of animal similes that were just cozy. Like, it created this sense of hygge, if you know what hygge is, just like this coziness. So she did a lot of animal similes and metaphors with butterflies and cats lazing about in the sun, and it was just, yeah, just cozy is the best way to describe it. The one thing that I didn't enjoy was this flashback that happened towards the end of the book. So the plot, the way that it's set up and the pacing is that it, you know, like a lot of books, you have the present tense storyline and then it flashbacks to different storylines throughout. She also rotates between point of view, so usually it's third person limited with Karu, but sometimes it's third person limited with Akiva, which is the seraphim. And so that kind of rotates back and forth. But the section that I'm talking about here was towards the last third of the book. There is a 75-page flashback. And that was too much, I felt like. So have you ever seen the plate spinners at different performing arts where they have to keep a plate spinning and then they spin another plate and have to keep that plate spinning? That's kind of what reading a book that goes from present to past feels like, is you have to keep the plate spinning in both tenses or in both timelines. And I felt like when I was reading that 75-page flashback that the timeline or the storyline of the present tense story, just that plate just crashed. Like, I could not maintain the tension that had been built up in the present tense storyline for that whole 75 pages. And that's what makes that going back and forth work really well for novels, is that it creates this constant sort of tension. Well, when it's a 75-page flashback, you just drop that tension in the other storyline, and it just didn't work. Now, I understand based on the story why she did it this way, and I can't really explain that without spoiling it for you. But I think that it could have been done a little bit better. And I think that there are other ways that it could have been worked in a way that kept the pace and that kept the tension and wasn't so exhausting. Like, it was exhausting trying to hold up the present tense story while working through this long flashback. That really is my only issue with the book, though. Otherwise, I really loved it. And let's look at the word bank. So as I said, Laini Taylor is a wordsmith. I do mark words that I don't know so that I can look them up, and I'll share them here with you. There's a lot. Buckle your seatbelts. All right, so here's the word bank. Accretes, activism, caracal, chivid, concrescence. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing some of these. Demurral, gelaba, effulgent, eidolon, enfeeble, fricative, that was one of my favorites. Nawa, hummock, ineffable, ineluctable, limed, lintel, medina, maniers, moiling, nacre, it's a French word, rickrack, rill, sallies, shrive, spinnaker, souks, susurrus, that was another favorite of mine, tadilact, tarbouche, temerity, thurible, touts, welter, and salage. A lot of words that I didn't know. Like I said, she really works with language to her advantage, and you can tell that she's traveled a lot and knows several different languages, because a lot of those words were probably language from like North Africa, which is where Carrie travels at one point. So I was really impressed with just that wide expanse of vocabulary. So a question that I always ask when I read a book to determine the value of that book is, would I read it again? And my answer to that question is a definite yes. And I also plan on reading the next book in that trilogy. Discussion question for you guys. I feel like one of the discussion questions that was just calling out to me as I read this book is, where do you feel most at home? So if you've read that book, or planning to read it, or are reading it, or just find this video interesting, let me know down below. Where do you feel most at home? Because that was definitely a theme throughout Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I will also link below where you can purchase the book. It is available in a lot of different formats: Kindle book, ebook, hardcover, paperback, etc. So that's it for today's video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below if you found it interesting and you want to see more book reviews. If you have any suggestions for books you would like to see me review, feel free to post that below as well. I do take requests for book reviews. So if you are a writer and you would like your book reviewed, go to my website to read the instructions on how to submit a request for a book review. I do already have my July book request submitted and accepted, so the next opening would be for August 2018. And I should also remind you that the word bank that I read you, all those words that I didn't know the definition to, I do now. I do have the definitions to those words linked on my blog, which I will link down below as well. So that's this video. That was Daughter of Smoke and Bone. Check it out. If you read it, let me know what you think. In the meantime, read good books and drink good coffee. Bye.